Hello there, it's Jackie Bolhuis from Klompen Stampers. Welcome to part 3 in the series I've been doing lately about all the basic components of card making. We had one whole video with all kinds of tips and hacks for stamps and the different types of stamps. Then from there we went to paper and I showed you how to cut paper to make your card bases, as well as kind of an easy way to come up with different layers and what size to cut your layers for on your cards. And now part 3, today we're talking all about inks. Oh my goodness, this can be one of those confusing things. What ink do I use for what? I'm using this to color now. What ink and this and that? And I know it's confusing. I have to stop and think sometimes as well. So once again, I'm not stamping. So I'm just kind of taking this time to really dig deep and show you like everything you need to know about all these different components of card making. So I hope if you're brand new, this information is super helpful for you. And I also hope that if you've been stamping for a while, you still watch and you pick up a tip or two. I feel like we can always be learning, and I always try to make things as easy as possible. I don't want it complicated. I don't want you to have to really like think hard. We're going to just try to make it super simple. So before I flip the camera down, just a quick reminder, there will be a corresponding blog post, and the link to that is down in the video description. And when you click on that, it will take you over there where I'll have more information, kind of a recap. And for this one, I'll have a chart that you can download, or like a little PDF document, we'll call it, that will talk about all the inks and all the different uses and some tips and stuff for each. So a lot of the stuff I'm going through today, but it'll be a real nice handy reference for you. And you're going to find that by clicking on the link down in the video description to the blog post. And then while you're there, make sure to sign up for my email newsletter if you're not already a subscriber. I love to share free card making tutorials. And when you join my email list, every single week I send at least 2, sometimes more and sometimes more even during the week. You just never know. I like to share as many card making ideas as I can to give you all kinds of ideas for you to stamp and create on your own. Okay, let's flip the camera down and let's talk about inks. So like I said, I'm going to try to break this down and make it as simple as I can for you to understand like all the little basics about the different types of inks. So we're going to start with the classic Stampin Pad. Now this is a water-based dye ink. It's quick drying. It's really, your most all-purpose ink. Now with Stampin Up, these come in a whole variety of colors. I love all the colors and the color coordination between the cardstock and the designer series paper, the ribbon and the embellishments and everything that goes along with our ink pads. So they're really kind of one of the staples of Stampin' Up! Products. Now, these are probably a little different than other ones on the market if you've never used Stampin' Up! Ones before, because they open in kind of a different way. It's almost like a compact, and if you hold it on its side, you should be able to open it up like this. Now, I find it's kind of hard to open. I don't know why. I struggle opening like that. So my little tip and the way I always open my pads is I hold it like I'm reading it in both hands, and I take both my thumbs on the top and I just press back there. And see how that pops it open? We'll do that again. So that's how I open my pads. I find it's easier. And then they flip and they slide in. Now the reason for this is if you look at it, when this is closed, that ink is actually being stored upside down. That keeps the ink at the surface of your stamping area so that it's always nice and wet for you to get a good image with. If you've got older pads or different types of pads, we always recommend that you do store them upside down. Now, but that means with these, they automatically go upside down. So don't put them upside down. Does that make sense? Okay, now another thing that a lot of people don't know about, on these pads, if you flip them over to the back, you will see some labels. Now they are in several different languages because Stampin' Up! Sells in other countries as well, but these are designed to put on the side of your pad so when they're stacked up or in a storage, you know what color they are. So this one I hadn't labeled yet, and I like to use my take your pick tool and that pointy end and peel that up. So there it says Evening Evergreen. I'm going to just grab that on our hands and then stick it right down here. Oops, let's try to get it as straight as I can. Doesn't want to work for me here. Let's go. On the front of the pad. just like so. Because these pads, you can actually, they stack really nice. They've got like the little pins on them. So if you don't have a holder that you put them in, they actually will stamp or stack really nice for storage. Or if you use Stampin' Up storage, they slide in really good. But it's really nice to have the name on there. Now, I think I did it on these. Let's look. Nope, some of them, what I've done is taken those extra stickers. Oop, that one's opening hard. There you go. And put it on the inside of my pad. See where it says, I can't read that. I don't know what language that is. But I just took one of the additional stickers and I put it on the cover. So if I remember using it for watercoloring. And then I also, let's just slide this one in here, took one, there's a blank one. Okay, you can see this blank one right there. That quite often I peel off and I stick right down there in the little well of the case. So we could actually do that here if you want, so you can see. So it's just kind of a sticker that you can use whatever you want. Can't set that down because I've got it open. We're gonna get ink everywhere at the rate I'm going. There we go. And then what I did is I just kind of stuck it right down in there like so. And you can just use this to press it in there. That way when these pads are open and sitting like this, it kind of helps you see what color it is, because like this is so dark, it's hard to tell. Now look, I got ink all over my hands, which is normal. I always have ink. So let's just pause. Let me show you a little hack here. Did you know that alcohol or hand sanitizer, which is mostly alcohol, is great for taking ink off? I have, I don't know, bottles of hand sanitizer everywhere on my stamp table here, and that was pretty dark, so it's probably not going to come completely off. But if I just take that hand sanitizer and rub when I get ink on my hands, it won't come off. It may have stained my skin a little bit, but it's not going to come off when I go to touch projects and I'm stamping and all that, because how many times have you had ink on your hands and you get it someplace? So hand sanitizer, spray stuff especially, is kind of a little necessity in my stamp room. I like to think of it. Okay, let's talk about these classic stamp pads a little bit more. I want to show you how to re-ink them. Now, they come quite juicy. And as a matter of fact, I think once in a while we get an ink pad that's way too juicy. They kind of got over-inked in the manufacturing process. If that ever happens to you, just take some paper towel or tissue and just blot off a lot of that ink. And I know it feels a little wasteful, but trust me, there's plenty of ink to last you a long time. But if it's too wet, do that. Now, after you start using them for a while, you're going to find that maybe when you stamp, and I don't know if this one really needs to be re-inked or not. Actually, it's not too bad. But I want to show you anyway. With the re-inkers, I just take them and I kind of squeeze it and do like scribbles up and down, you know, depending on how dry it is, and scribble a bunch of that on. And then I like to take a plastic spoon, just the back side of it, and just kind of gently rub circles. Looks like I got a little piece of cardstock on there. But rub circles and kind of rub that ink in. And we'll see here. Let's see what it looks like now when I stamp it. Yep, see how it is darker? It really didn't need inking that bad, but I wanted to just show you how to re-ink it. Now, another little tip with these pads, especially with your really detailed stamps, and again, I tried to find one of mine that was over inked and I couldn't, but sometimes when you go to stamp it, you're not going to get a real clear image. This one actually stamped really nice, but let's make believe I looked at that and it just looked like there was way too much ink. You'll actually catch me doing this in a lot of my normal stamping videos. If it seems too wet, I will just take the spoon and press the ink off to the side. You can go one way and go the other way. Now, I really haven't taken any ink off of it, but I've moved the ink and you can see a little bit of a difference there, but sometimes it's really drastic. So this wouldn't be a case if it's way too inky and it feels like it's gooshing, then you want to dab it. But if it's just a little bit too much ink for your image, push it off to the side. And then as you're done using it, it's going to kind of flow back into the middle. And we really haven't taken any ink off that ink pad at all. Now, before we put the classic pads aside to pull out the next ink pad that I want to talk about, another thing you can do with them is use the ink on these for watercoloring. Now, some people prefer to just use a re-inker, and they'll put just a little dot of a re-inker on a clear block, and then you can add some water and do some watercoloring, which we will do this in an upcoming video. The other way you can use these pads is to actually take a clear block, dab them on your pad and get ink that way and pick it up with a water painter. So you'll see all that in the coloring video, but it just kind of show you how the inks and the re-inkers can be used in a variety of different ways. So now let's set these aside and let's talk about the VersaMark ink pad. So the VersaMark is kind of a unique pad. It's actually called a Watermark stamp pad. It's essentially clear ink. And it's more of a pigment ink, so it's slow drying and it's a bit sticky, I like to call it. Now, one of the main uses is for embossing. You see me use this a lot with white embossing powder or colored embossing powders. And again, we'll have a whole video coming up here real soon just on embossing. But the other way to use this is as a tone-on-tone type pad. And if you want to just make a background and you can just see how subtle that image is, it'll get a little bit darker as it dries, but it makes it appear like I stamped Granny Apple Green on Granny Apple Green. So you could stamp on any colored cardstock with this and have just that nice tone-on-tone look. So that's the VersaMark, mainly for tone-on-tone or embossing. So now let's grab the Memento pad. The Memento is a fade-resistant dye ink. This is what I like to call your all-purpose black. I use this for all my black stamping when I'm stamping greetings, just a good all-around black. It does open like so. These are actually not manufactured by Stampin' Up, so they're a little bit different in design. This is one I like to store upside down to make sure it stays, nice and wet up at the surface. And this is also the ink pad you will want to use when you stamp with alcohol markers. It's designed to not bleed at all with alcohol. Now, on the contrary, if you're watercoloring, you don't want to use this one. And that's what becomes really confusing. So think of Memento is good for Stampin' Blends. And this is why that little reference chart I have for you over on my website will be real helpful. So that is the Memento. Now the other black, and it's hard because they kind of look alike, is the Stazon Black. Now this one is a permanent black. You can even stamp on non-porous surfaces, wood or plastic or window sheets with this, and it will dry and it will be permanent. Now, because it is so permanent, it's great for watercoloring. When you add water to it, it's not going to smear. But then kind of the bad part about it, I guess, is you do want to make sure you use your Stazon cleaner with it, because otherwise you're not going to get it off your stamps. And I recommend cleaning it just as soon as you've stamped with it. And this cleaner actually comes with a little pad on the top. So after you've used it, you just rub it on there. And then I like to wipe it off and then also clean it a second time using Stampin' Mist just to get that cleaner off because it's a little bit harsh. So this is Stazon. So those are our two blacks. Again, I prefer Memento for just all my everyday need a black something stamped. Also use that with Stampin' Blends. Stazon, I use if I need something permanent on a non-porous surface or if I'm going to watercolor. So those are the two blacks. Now let's talk about white. So Stampin' Up's white pad is a craft pigment ink. Now this one's a little unique in that when you get it, it comes uninked. And the case is the same, it just has the foam pad there, but it comes with the re-inker. Pigment ink dries up, it doesn't stay really good on the pad forever. So it's really designed so you ink it as you use it. So when I'm ready to use this, just like I showed on that other pad, I'll do, a good scribble of ink on there. I'll take my spoon and I'll rub it in and then I'll use it. You can kind of see here, I had all this ink in the center, but I didn't even get it all the way out to the edges because I knew I wasn't really going to need it there. I'm not a huge fan of this pad. It will show up on darker cardstocks, but it's still not that real dark, deep, crisp white. So often you'll see me have a white greeting on a black piece of cardstock. That's white embossed. People ask me once in a while, well, can't I just stamp it in white? Yeah, you can, but it certainly is not as contrast. It's not that really nice deep white. So I like these more for like a background or a more subtle white on a colored piece of cardstock. So I don't really use this a whole lot, but I know a lot of people love it. So I wanted to make sure I shared it with you. Okay, we're moving on to ink spots. Now these are really two ways to get them. There is a set, and those are the colors right there. It comes a set of 8. You don't have any options. It's just these are the colors you get. It's a great kind of beginner setup for starting out with stamping, to have a few colors without being, totally committed to buying a lot of products. You also, if you subscribe to Paper Pumpkin, each Paper Pumpkin kit comes with at least one spot, and they try to rotate those colors so you never get a same color throughout the course of the year. So I know there's a lot of people that have built a big collection of Stampin' spots just by being a member of Paper Pumpkin. Now these you can re-ink the same way. It is the, I guess, linen pad instead of that foam. So it doesn't take a whole lot. I just squeeze some on there like that. It kind of soaks in. You don't have to use the spoon, and re-ink them all you want. If you like the smaller pad, and when you do use these, the best way to use them is upside down. Just take your ink pad and dab your stamp like that. If you like the spots rather than the full-size pads, you can also buy uninked ones. And these come in a set of 5, I believe, completely uninked. And then you just buy the re-inkers that you want. You have to re-ink them quite often because it's so small, they're not going to last forever. But I know there's a lot of people, for storage reasons or whatever, they just buy like the set of a color collection set of re-inkers and then a bunch of spots, and they just re-ink these as they need them. So it's a great alternative to then having all the larger pads. So that is just another option for ink pads for you. And then finally, one other option when it comes to ink pads, I want to talk about the Stampin Write Markers. Now I know these are markers, they're not ink pads, but I like to call them my mini ink pads. Again, for storage reasons, I know there's people that just buy a set of markers. But with markers, you can color directly onto the back of your stamp. And that's why I call it my little mini ink pad. You could color the whole image in one color, or these are awesome for if you want multiple colors on one stamped image. We put our pink on there and our green on there, and now we can flip it over and we can stamp it. Now, I don't think it gets as nice of an image. Those markers kind of beat up and they're not quite as dark and consistent as a pad, but it absolutely works. So I like to call them my mini ones. Now, word of warning. These are the Stampin' Write water-based markers. Do not use Stampin' Blends alcohol markers directly on your stamps. They are not made for that, and they will stain your stamps permanently and never ever come off. So if you're going to use markers, make sure it is the Stampin' Write.
Well, there you go. Kind of short and sweet. Lots of information about the main ink pads and all the different ones that Stampin' Up carries. I hope you picked up a tip or two. I hope it kind of helped you get straight in your brain what ink pad is used for what. Remember, the most confusing are the blacks. Stazon, Memento. Stazon's for watercoloring. Memento is your basic all around, use it all the time, plus for the Stampin' Blends alcohol markers. Now don't forget, on the website you can download a little sheet that you can keep as a reference that has all kinds of little tips and little tidbits about all the different ink pads that might help you. And while you're over on the website there, if you'd like to order or request the Stampin' Up catalog, click on catalogs. I would love to be your Stampin' Up demonstrator, send you a catalog, and help you in any way that I can. So thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I'll be back actually stamping with you real soon. So until then, have a stamp happy day.